Hi, and welcome again to What I Did Next from A&T Media. I'm Malak Fuad, your host. We're closing out the year with a special episode with EFG Holding, and I'm joined today by the group's Chief Financial and Operations Officer, Mohamed Abdel Khabir. Mohamed joined the investment bank back in 2008 and took on the CFO role in 2016. Earlier this year, he added onto his portfolio the responsibility of operations, which includes marketing, technology, and administration. Mohamed's been actively involved in EFG's transformation from a MENA-based investment bank to its current avatar, a leading financial institution with a universal bank in Egypt and a leading investment bank in MENA. My show focuses a lot on people's life journeys and their pivot points in life and how you can take a certain path and then it leads you one way and you could have gone another way. And so I'm always curious to hear about people's pivot points and, both professional and personal. Can you look back at maybe, one or two pivots from your personal life and your professional life that have led you here? I've got some very clear ones in my life that stand out for me. Are there some that stand out for you as, you know, being the right decision at the time and taking you to the next level?
What comes to mind from a professional standpoint, I started my career in Procter and Gamble, so in finance, but in a very different, let's say, uh, area of business. So, and then a few years down the road, I was actually quite happy there. It's something that I'm glad that I took this path, but I decided that I would like to go to a core finance, basically industry, and that was a pivotal point in from a career standpoint, and I shifted into investment banking. Very timely, 2008 global financial crisis, but I still did the move. Luckily, the world didn't collapse. It was a very tough period at that point in time, but I think it was uh, very beneficial. And the second point was obviously when I shifted from investment banking into a group CFO. And hopefully the third point would be my current role. So these are, I would say, three pivotal points.
Big shifts,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's interesting as well that coming from P&G, we all know P&G as such an amazing school for marketing, right? It's so renowned for that. And obviously you're wearing that hat as well to a certain degree where you are. So that's always going to be, having that toolkit that you learned as a younger man is always useful, I think. And 2025, so how would you say EFG has changed in the last 10 years? Uh, what's been the biggest change in your mind?
So EFG has really gone through a paradigm shift. I know it's a cliche and lots of people use the word, but really EFG has completely changed from a pure play investment bank all the way to a financial services company. It's not really a matter of changing the business model per se, but it's also the change in the mindset, the change in how we operate the business. Operating an investment bank is very different than operating an NBFI plus an investment bank plus also now a commercial bank. And it's also embracing basically change and a change in how we do things, a change in the culture, and lots of changes for a company in a relatively short period of time.
It's something I've been curious about for a while. Does EFG think of itself as first and foremost an Egyptian bank and then a regional player? Or when you think of your strategy, your regional strategy, your global strategy, do you think purely on a regional level and that Egypt is a portion of that?
I think we're very proud of our Egyptian roots and heritage, but we are not an Egyptian bank anymore per se. We are a regional player, especially or particularly on the investment bank. In fact, uh, over 50% of our revenue from the investment bank comes from outside Egypt. We have very strong operations in Saudi, in the UAE, in Kuwait. So we no longer believe that we are a pure play Egyptian bank. Yes, granted that other parts of the business, so for example, the commercial bank and the NBFI, are purely in Egypt, and hence the weight of Egypt is still bigger. but I don't think we can define EFG as we speak as an Egyptian bank.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about the global footprint and the regional strategy. So how do you balance the expansion across your footprint, and how do you make a cohesive MENA-focused strategy?
All right. So first, let's define our core markets, and we defined our core markets. So we defined our core markets as being obviously Egypt and the UAE, Saudi, and Kuwait. These are the core markets that we operate in. And then the idea is to build basically products and or new jurisdictions that either complement, serve, or tie in, have synergies with these markets and our clients in these markets. So that's the thought process. And we've tried several things. So trial and error is there. Recognizing when things go well and things don't go well is key. And this really defines how we continue to expand or not, depending on how well things are going and how much they fit within the rest of the group.
Can you give me an example of that?
Sure. So I think we had embarked on frontier expansion. And we opened offices in Pakistan, Nigeria, Kenya. At that point in time, the emerging markets were basically very much in demand globally and from our clients and so forth. And then things took a turn, and we sat down, we assessed. What should we do? Should we continue in these markets or not? And the decision was we will not continue in these markets, and we started exiting these markets. So that's, for example, one of the examples of entering and exiting markets. Other examples of actually going straight into markets that or products that we continue to have. The whole NBFI platform is an example of something that did not exist in EFG. So Corp Solutions, Value, Tanmaya, and all of the rest of the platform did not exist before 2015. And this is something that we built, acquired, and partnered different business models and worked very well for EFG.
This has become a huge success for the bank, this whole side of the business.
It has. It's been quite a journey. Building something.
Does Bank Next fall into that category?
No, Bank Next is our third pillar. So the way we operate now is really three pillars. We have the investment bank, EFG Hermes, which is our origin and heritage. That's basically your typical investment banking, asset management, private equity, research, and brokerage. And then you have EFG Finance, which is the NBFI platform. And this basically has Tanmaya, Value, Corp Solutions, and we have ventures into CAF Insurance and Bidaya in terms of mortgage. And then we also have Bank Next as a third pillar, and that's actually the newest pillar we have. We've always wanted to own a commercial bank, and finally we were able to acquire one, and we're also very happy and proud of how things are progressing there.
And is that an area that is going to be developed further with other types of banks? Do you think that this is an area that EFG will continue to try and develop?
Absolutely. It is a key area of focus. When we bought the bank, it was branded as AI Bank. We rebranded the bank. The marketing team, I think, did a fantastic job.
It was a very successful rollout of a brand, yeah.
It was, and we're very happy with that. This is definitely a key driver of where we're going in the future. Not only because we believe in the business model itself, but also because it's very, very synergetic across basically the rest of EFG's services. So now you really have a full-fledged service. You can go to a client, offer him commercial banking, offer him leasing, offer him investment banking services, and offer him, if he's a big corporate, maybe buy now, pay later via Value. So it's a very nice story. And I think the bank fits very nicely within what we do.
And I presume, being a regional player, that this kind of development, this sort of banking, commercial banking arm, you're probably looking at different markets. We're not just thinking of Egypt. I mean, you did it in Egypt as a first time experience, but I presume that this is something you could look at across all markets.
Your presumption is correct. We usually start with what we know best. In this case, it's Egypt, and hopefully, once we get the model right, we're always open to expand elsewhere. We haven't yet embarked on this journey, but it's something that's actually part of our DNA.
And I suppose that's what falls under your M&A strategic development right now. You're looking across the region at potential opportunities, right?
We're always on the lookout, and I think what we have tried several models in terms of how we build businesses. So we've tried complete greenfield models from scratch. So, for example, our operations in Saudi, in the UAE, these are all greenfield that we started from scratch, continue to operate fully, and so forth. We also tried building, for example, something from scratch, like value, and then all the way to taking it public. That's another model that worked for us. We've tried acquisitions. We acquired Tenmea, which is integrated in some ways, and we've also, for example, bought the bank, which is not integrated in terms of an operation, but we have board oversight and so forth. But due to rules and regulations, the central bank, basically, we have to have a fully functioning, let's say, segregated and very clear management of the bank. We are heavily involved. There's a lot of cross-selling and so forth. But what I'm trying to say is that we have tried so many different models in terms of building businesses, in terms of M&A, and we're very happy with the outcome.
And tell me a little bit about the lessons you learned from across these different markets in the M&A world. I mean, I'm sure working in Saudi is different to working in Kuwait, is different to working in Egypt. What have been some of the lessons that you've learned and the learnings that you want to implement going forward?
That's
It's a hard one, right?
lots of
There's
lessons
a big
learned,
list.
a very big list, and it starts with one size does not fit all. You cannot assume that what you did in one market would be will work in another market, but there are maybe some similarities that we have learned. One of the similarities is that management and management teams are key. So when we acquire a company or start a company from scratch, it's very important to have the right people in place. I think what we've also learned coming from an investment banking background and being originally an investment bank is that you really cannot do everything, right? You have to get the right people to do the right stuff, and that's a key to success. The other thing is understanding where you're operating, and also getting the right people, not only from a technical perspective, but also from a cultural perspective. So, for example, our CEO in Saudi is a Saudi national, and that has helped us a lot in for example, driving the business in Saudi.
And you yourself, how often do you visit these different markets?
As much as I possibly can. So the UAE is our what we call our second head office. So I'm there quite often, maybe once every month or month and a half. Saudi maybe 2-3 times a year. So I tend to try to go around, but it's really a matter of time and logistics, and technology helps,
Of
obviously.
course.
Yeah. So. Teams, Zoom, you name it, does save time and effort.
Yeah, I want to move on and look a little bit about the regulatory environments that you operate in.
Mhm.
How do you navigate the different environments when it comes to regulation?
So regulation is basically, I would say, a very is one of the toughest challenges that the whole finance industry faces. I'm not talking about Egypt or the GCC. I'm talking global. So that's really a big challenge. But what we've done really is to try to uh, embrace, especially the regulators, in terms of working hand in hand. So, case in point, for example, when we first started Value, there was no consumer finance law. This was something
Hmm.
that was ungoverned, and we worked hand in hand. We launched that, and we worked hand in hand with the regulator until the consumer finance law came out. Also, other examples on the brokerage side, we have lots of consultations with the regulators in Saudi and the UAE in terms of enhancing the general, let's say, framework and trading frameworks and so forth. So it's something that is a challenge, and it's not because we work hand in hand with the regulators that regulators are not tough on us. In fact, they are tougher on us because they expect you, being the market leader, to be basically the norm, to be a role model. We don't get any free passes at all. So, and that's what a regulator should be doing. But it's really finding the balance between being big but nimble, being innovative but sticking to the rules. So I think this is the constant sort of challenge that we always face and try to navigate.
Mm-hmm. Listening to you speak, it made me think of something. It's something, considering the turmoil our region has been in for the last 3 years. There's been a lot of talk about trying to do some kind of economic union between countries and, bringing countries together from an economic point of view. And I wonder whether a bank like EFG, which is working across so many different markets and especially with regulators, is there a role and is there a place for a company like EFG trying to work together to form some sort of, almost like an EU for the Middle East, getting countries together, bringing standardization across different industries, and obviously in your case it would be banking. Do you come across things like that in your work? Do regulators talk about things like that? Do different markets wish for something like that?
I think, Malik, it's really there are different bodies addressing different sort of aspects to it. So when we're talking about government to government discussions, that's not what EFG would be involved in. But if we're talking about capital markets, yes, we are involved with different regulators in consultation, and we do showcase what other jurisdictions have done and so forth. So it's sort of a guiding line. But if we're talking about public policy and so forth, that's more on
That's a
the
different
government level.
remit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a different
Of course.
yeah,
Of course. Of
exactly.
course. Tell me a little bit about, building leadership across the different markets that you're working across, leadership, talent, succession, attracting the right caliber of people. Obviously, a bank like EFG and any bank or any company that's been running for so long has a certain philosophy, a certain way of doing business, and you're trying to attract a certain type of person. What are the types of people that you're trying to attract and are looking for?
All right. So first, let's start with the people. So this is our biggest asset. We don't sell products. We don't have any machinery. We have people providing services,
Mm-hmm.
and that is the starting point. So you really have to have the right people and the right mindset in order to be relevant and continue to be competitive in this market. So in terms of what EFG is and what it offers and so forth, I think we're in a very nice sweet spot. So as we talked before, I started my career in Procter & Gamble. It's a wonderful school, and most big multinationals are. They really show you how processes are run, how thinking is done, and so forth. But as you move ahead in your career, you realize that these are massive shifts. In order for you to change course, it's not that easy. And I've also advised lots of family businesses during my investment banking time. And they are a bit behind, or some of them are a bit behind in terms of institutionalizing the business. So it's still not necessarily a one-man show, but it's also you have to go back to the family for key decisions and so forth. Now EFG is the happy middle. So effectively, our board has a lot of of trust, and they have put a lot of trust in Karim, our Awad, our group CEO, and they've given him the reins, and he in turn has appointed us as executive committee members, and he has given us the task and responsibility for each one of us to carry out their duties, and he holds us accountable, rightfully so, in order for us to deliver. When you have someone who can make a difference, and even at a younger age. So if EFG has the latitude for people to actually make a difference across all basically the spectrum of employment, you will see a lot of young, motivated people who really want to make a difference. And when they see that their input is taken and the ship actually does change course, that's a very motivating.
I've always been very impressed by something with EFG, and I mentioned it in the previous interview we did a month or so ago, which is that the people I've interviewed from the bank have always been there such a long time, and I think that's such a wonderful, result for any company when when you're able to retain talent for decades. I think that's the best example of a successful company. And you've been there so long. Everyone I've spoken to has been there a long time, and that can only be a good thing, I think, as
I
for the
believe so.
reputation of a
Yeah.
bank. Yeah, it's a very positive thing. I want to look forward a little bit, Mohammed, and think about the digital transformation that's happening all around us in all of our lives. Banking is not different to that. We're looking at AI as being a total disruptor. How are you harnessing that and other technologies?
So AI and technological advancement in general is really not an option. It's reality. That's what we're living in, and the whole point is trying to make this sort of the mindset of how we think. When we talk about technology at EFG, it's not only about the client-facing technology. So it's not only about the app that you're going to use or the interface with the client or direct market access for our traders and so forth. But it's also the way we operate internally. So a lot of our basically what we do, we try to automate in order to free time for our staff to do more value added things. And even I will go as from the starting point. Even when we develop, we use AI to increase our development basically rates and accuracy and productivity and so forth. So the whole idea is to try to embed technology, AI being sort of the forefront of it, but all of the spectrum of technology in what we do in order for us to be able to be more efficient and stay relevant.
I want to talk to you as well about investor relations and crafting consistent narratives.
Yeah.
In the context of banking, what does that mean? What does creating consistent narratives mean? I know it's important because you need to put forward stability and a sense of calmness across different markets. But can you explain it a bit further for me?
Okay, so we've seen our fair share of different shareholders and investors. Some of them are very involved, some of them not as involved, some of them are very sophisticated. Others are take it in a more simplistic approach, and you asked me at the start of the interview to try to tone down the financial jargon.
For
I've
me, for
tried,
me.
for all of us. So I've tried to do that as much as possible, and actually we try to do that when we talk to our different investors. What we try to do is to tailor what we our narrative to the different investors, but there's one common point that needs to be there. There needs to be a very let's say focused point of communication on what we're doing. As
Mhm.
management, what are we doing? Where is this company heading? And this needs to be explained in different methodologies, be it simple, be it more complex. I know that EFG is on the more complex side, but that's something that we need to do. So, for example, when we first um, sold our majority stake in Bank Credit Lebanon, we outlined a strategy that we would build a whole NBFI platform. And to be quite honest, some of our shareholders and investors were a bit skeptical. So how are you going to build this? And we said in 5 years' time, this will contribute to 50% top and bottom line of the whole group. And there was some skepticism. How is this going to be done? This you haven't ventured into this before, and
It's
so
very
forth.
ambitious and so on. Yeah.
Exactly. And we embarked on the journey. We got delayed a bit by COVID, but then we had another excellent opportunity of actually acquiring the bank. But as we speak now, the lending businesses, the bank included, has roughly 40 to 60% contribution of our top line and bottom line, which is something that we had outlined much earlier.
So you surpassed the expectations, actually.
We did surpass the expectations. It might have taken slightly longer because COVID hit us in the middle.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it was something that we outlined, worked against, and delivered.
Yeah. How do you mitigate, just talking about that, how do you mitigate for things like COVID and unexpected scenarios? I mean, there are obviously crisis management skills that you're all having to be aware of, but we're in a scary time. I think not just the region, the whole world, where at any moment, people are talking potential recession, AI bubble that might, burst. Going back to the dot-com issue that happened in 2001 when the bubble burst. How do you plan for something that might happen tomorrow, that might happen in a year, that might not happen at all? It's a very difficult thing to be juggling while trying to maintain a smooth sailing ship, right?
100%, and I think we have this discussion internally a lot, and in one of the interviews actually that Karim had recently, it's a very simple and straightforward answer. Resilience for us is not a choice. We've been in turmoil and markets
Sure.
for a very long period of time. So two revolutions, COVID,
Absolutely.
global financial crisis, geopolitical issues. So I think it's really about building the resilience. And we have built the resilience.
I just want to stop you. How do you do that? How do you build resilience?
In my mind, there are two things that help build resilience. One actually is going through a crisis. So you understand the parameters of a crisis, how you can manage it, and how you can get out. So that builds some, let's say, data points, and it gives you the flavor of what a crisis can be.
And you have the learnings from precedent. You have precedent.
100%. You have precedent learnings, and then you start to understand that you have to address what you can control. Some things you cannot control. So trying to address something that you cannot control, be it external markets, be it whatever it is something that would really yield no results. So in a crisis, you first look at what you have under your hands, what you can control, address it, and then basically the external factor becomes whatever it is. So that's sort of the focus that we have in terms of managing crisis modes, and we've had quite a few of those.
Yeah, and I think this is the case for any business. You have to have the toolkit, and you have to have calm heads around you as well. Yeah. You've got to have people around you who have been through it before, as you say, but also don't panic, because I think thinking back to previous issues, then you can make the right decision for the future, I think, as well. But this is very important.
Yes, not to panic is key. Yeah,
is key. Exactly.
Key,
exactly.
Of course.
I want us to go into something much lighter, if you don't mind. I want one thing we do a lot on the show is we do something called the lightning round. So I have a list of very silly questions that I like to ask my guests. It's a way of showing a little bit more about you as a person, your personality,
Mhm.
and it's just a fun little segment I like to end on.
Sure.
So, if you don't mind, we'll jump into it.
All right.
Okay, what's your most used emoji?
The smiley face.
The
The
smiley face,
traditional
yeah,
smiley face.
yeah, the classic.
The classic one.
If you had 25 hours in a day, what would you use the extra hour for?
That's a tough one. More time with the family, followed by a bit more sports.
A bit more sports. What do you do now? What is your exercise regime?
Swimming, riding a bicycle. Uh, try as much as possible not to go to the gym. Not my favorite. Anything that's outdoor, anything that has movement, kayaking, whatever it is. So
Do you try and do something every day? Is that part of your way of keeping mentally healthy?
it is. It's not every day, unfortunately, but it's maybe roughly 4 times a week
That's pretty good.
in the morning.
That's good. Looking ahead, and this can be something personal, it can be something professional, it can be anything that you think about. What is something you're excited about when you look ahead?
So I think the closest one would be uh, my daughter graduating from school. She has one more year to go after this one, so that's I'm
You're
not sure if
excited about that. Most
I, I,
parents are
I'm
not
I'm
excited about that.
excited is not the right word. It's something that
Anxious.
anxious about. Yeah, that's the correct terminology. Yeah,
That's the one.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the
yeah.
one.
But it's
Yeah,
exciting for her, the next phase, I think, you know?
very exciting for her.
Yeah.
Very difficult for us, but or
Of course,
an-
of course.
anxious for us. Yeah.
Of course. And on a slightly different note, if you were to look ahead, what concerns you or what are you anxious about?
Again, back to the resilience point, especially at EFG, I think it's really a matter of us being able to continue to deliver. It's we've gone through a lot. I think the company has changed a lot to the better. The business model has changed. So it's not a matter of concern or a matter of something that's anxious, but it's a matter of having the grit and the resilience to continue to deliver. This is that's what I'm looking to forward.
Yeah, and being vigilant and just being hyper aware of what's necessary.
100%.
If you were to choose another profession, what would you do?
Oh, uh, I can pass by as an engineer. That's something that's easy. It comes easily to my mind.
But you didn't study it, right? At university,
No,
you didn't do
no, no,
engineering.
no. I didn't. I was at. I had to choose between either being a finance professional or an engineer, but actually, I chose the finance profession. Happy with it. In my spare time, I can do some engineering stuff. That's something that comes naturally to my
Like
mind.
you're able to fix things easily at home. In other words.
That's for sure. To my bad luck, because then I'm I'm used and abused for it. But
Exactly,
I can
exactly.
do that. Yeah,
You can do that. Okay,
I
nice.
can.
What is your favorite activity?
Anything that's outdoor in the water. So swimming, kayaking, diving, anything that's in the water.
And where do you go kayaking? Are there places in Egypt for kayaking?
Mostly in Buna. That's
Moon,
the.
yeah, okay. So just yeah, okay, nice. And did you do it anywhere else like on when you've traveled? Is it something you travel to and look forward to doing?
I have done it quite often when traveling and hiking. So anything that's outdoor resonates with me quite well,
Mm,
especially if it's close to the water. So that's my
yeah, yeah.
happy spot.
What is your least favorite activity?
That's a difficult one. I've never actually thought about.
I get very strange answers from people, but it tends to be the things everyone hates, like doing admin, doing taxes, things like that.
If paying the bills is an activity, then that's probably it.
But if you're a finance guy, then for you that would be easy, and you wouldn't think twice about it, probably anyway.
No, it's not something that comes across as no. But I
Yeah,
really haven't thought about. what the least favorite activity is.
If you're such an outdoor type of guy, you'd probably hate being indoors for long periods of time. Probably.
It's actually sort of counterintuitive to what I do, because I spend a lot of time in the office. But even when I do, I try to sort of move here and there, and so I try to keep it as active as possible.
I went to a lecture the other day, a health lecture about longevity, and he's an American doctor, and he was saying that for a lot of people like you, you are sitting a lot all day long. Every 45 minutes, you have to get up and move.
Yeah.
I thought it was longer, but it's every 45 minutes. So it's very important, apparently.
Yes, it is. And I think I beat this, so I move quite a lot.
Yeah.
But,
and a lot of people have those standing desks now. You know, those standing desks?
Yes. That's tough. I've tried it before. I can't get the hang of it, so I still have the chair.
Yeah. Last two questions, and then I'll leave you. I want you to finish the sentence. I have a hard time
not doing my absolute best.
Are you a perfectionist?
Unfortunately, I think I am. I hope I'm not, but unfortunately...
I think it's a good trait, though. You don't think it's a good trait?
To a certain extent. Afterward, it becomes... You become tough on yourself, so...
That's true. Last question. Statement. You finished the sentence as well. I get joy from...
family.
Very nice. Thank you very much. This was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Malak Fuad, and this episode was produced by Chirag Desai. We'll be back in the new year with a bit of a refresh and new episodes with some amazing guests from across our incredible region. In the meantime, why not catch up with some of the old episodes from our back catalogue using your favorite podcast app as well as on YouTube. You can also connect with us on Instagram, TikTok, and on LinkedIn. Until next time, have a great new year.